Hey everybody, how's it going? So I just watched this movie on Netflix that's been very popular called Leave the World Behind. And it's basically about a gigantic cyber attack where you see self-driving cars get hacked so that they can run into stuff. It's basically like your typical disaster movie, and it's very dark, ominous. But if you understand like geopolitics or anything like this is actually a pretty stuffed movie. Now, at first, I'm gonna be honest. There's some points in the script, like just with establishing the characters as people, right? You have the mom who just doesn't like people. They're in like some dire straits in life. They have trouble, so they decide to go off onto a vacation home. So they rent one out with their family just to get away from everything. So it basically is just like that perfect cliche setup for isolation, which honestly, this movie did a really good job of hitting home the whole isolation thing via what would happen if like all of our phones and all of our connection devices and everything like that, the things we basically live by, all just went dark. Then it does a really good job of putting people in that perfect environment to really maximize the isolation because we get a lot of information from our phones and just it keeps us in tune with the world. It keeps us involved and invested in everything that's going on around us. It keeps us kind of connected throughout the phones. But when the phone shut off in the movie, I think they really also emphasized just as people, how disconnected we've really become with all of our video games and our softwares and how much we've been spending on the screen time. Even with the whole family, there was like a lot of disconnect between the family members. Even though near the end, when things got real, they were really there for each other and they also got to interact on more human levels. But like you really just sense that technology has taken a toll and hit us on our actual human connectivity, where we're all connected via the internet and networking and everything like that. And basically, if you're not understanding this yet, I mean, although the doomsday aspect, the impending war, the apocalypse via World War III that they really like to hit in there, and then they made it super apparent at the end. And like, look, the ending revelation of what was really going on, it was basically spelled out for us, and I really wasn't surprised by it. But it was even more real because I got to see it in real time, or what I had a rough idea of what it would be like. And we wouldn't really be connected in that world. In fact, a lot of the things would seem a little mysterious, even though like deep down in your gut, you kind of know what's going on and why things are so abnormal. So I did find effectiveness in the doomsday aspects to it, but I was really driven in by like the dialogue and how these characters just had to interact with each other. And honestly, I think my most missed message, in my opinion, that a lot of people I feel like we're not talking about as much was that human connectivity, specifically the daughter in this movie of the couple, right? They had two kids, and one was a daughter who seemed to kind of have like that spark from when you're a kid that goes away when you're an adult. I mean, it just paints this perfect sub dialogue of how you go through that digital filter and then you basically lose all sense of your childhood or your brightness or anything that kind of like really makes us human or brings us to our best selves. Like you can really tell the world kind of beats the daughter down a little bit just mentally because like she says, no one listens to what I have to say, and she feels completely ignored. And then there's this whole dialogue about how she's obsessed with the show Friends because it's the only thing that she really cares about because like even like the parents we're talking about, it just brings back a time where, that seems like it doesn't exist anymore. Meaning like that whole 90s era where we did have technology, but it wasn't disconnecting us. It wasn't bringing out the worst of us. It wasn't bringing narcissism to an all-time high. And even at the end of the movie where the guy explains what's going on, he said something that really rang true. You get the people to do the work for you, meaning you condition them to be a certain way, to be selfish, to be isolated, to be in their own little bubbles, to have no actual definition. So that way, when things get real, they don't know which way to turn. And especially at the end, when that one guy is about to turn on his friend, it just kind of showed like how we've been conditioned via this technology and how us humans always had a responsibility to put the phones down and not let them control us. Because the thing I view about a phone is it's a tool that has so many softwares and tools and gizmos that just make life easier, but we have surrendered ourselves fully to it without realizing we could put it down when we don't need it. That we could get so busy chasing that fame dream via our phones that we forget our friends right next to us. that we get so caught up in Twitter and all these social media apps where we are just bashing each other in real life, where we know we would not say half of those things to people in real life. And this is definitely one of my more passionate videos, my more passionate rants that I'm going to be putting on this channel. But I really want people to just kind of drive home, and when you watch that, pay attention to it, because I remember I said in a previous video how I have read books on like things like Gnosticism and how people have different spiritual abilities, like inner sparks that really connects them to the world, because deep down, some of these characters in this movie had a feeling of what was going on, or had a feeling that something wasn't right anymore, and they chose to kind of like isolate those things. So some of these characters had more of that quote unquote divine spark, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to make it a religious video, but that like divine essence to them than others. Like other people were kind of just in that humanoid stage, and then there were people who still had that light, that inner voice, that they knew what was going on, that they were informed, that they understood human behavior in certain aspects, whether it was the GH guy who was very wealthy, or the mom from the Complete Family, right? You know, the mom was very misanthropic and just hated people, but the guy had access to a lot of information where he had an itch. But also understood why humans have been conducted to react the way they have been, or live life the way they had. Like, why has the world of America kind of just gotten so bad? And you could sit around and point at fingers at political parties or political movements however you want, but at the end of the day, as human beings, it's also our choice on how we want to shape our society, and we have absolutely failed to do that. Because you've probably heard, a house divided among itself cannot stand, and I firmly believe that that is 100% true. And it's easier to topple a divided house than it is where people are united and love each other. And just as a person, what I can see is I see a lot of people who see what I see on a day-to-day basis, where we're kind of like, man, people aren't connected anymore. We could have that conversation. But another half of the people, it really just seems like they are so lost in their phones. They don't want to acknowledge the obvious elephant in the room, the dystopia that we've kind of started, the soft dystopia that we've created for ourselves. And I want to conclude it with how I saw the ending, because it was a very not so happy ending, where they kind of basically see the downfall of their homeland of America, where you see New York start to get leveled and everyone's all divided, isolated. There's no actual ending where they all come together. It just kind of seems like they fail at that aspect. And even like the emergency broadcasting system saying that there's heavy levels of radiation, aka you know what's going on, the final absolute collapse and meltdown. And even though, you know, a weapon can destroy a lot of stuff, but also I think one of the more tragic parts was, even though it was their last moments, they were all separate from each other, and the one person who did not have anybody around her when it happened was the daughter. She's left alone in her home, and she's eating junk food, and then she goes down to watch some TV, and she knows what's coming. Like, you could tell she's still in that thing where she's kind of just like accepted what it is, because she does not really like the world she lives in. Goes downstairs, finds that final episode of Friends on the DVD player, and then just pops it in and watches it. And for her, it's a happy ending, because like she said, she only cares about the characters because they seem like they're more connected than real people are now, which is very true. But everybody else is kind of realizing the reality right to their faces about what's going on. And she just kind of seems like she's in her own little world with that show. But you really can't blame her. So it's kind of a bittersweet one, where it's like kind of shame on the family and the world around her. And this is a kid that I think society was just about to fail anyway in a lot of ways. And she seemed like she really had an empathetic spark to her that was just slowly dying out throughout the movie. So yeah, it's not a happy Disneyland, oh, everything gets saved by Deus Ex, but to be real, I really do actually recommend this movie. I know it's not perfect. There's some parts that are a little corny, but also like there's also some really cool parts about like the frequency warfare and how animals would react to a complete like shutdown of all things. Like, it really shows how it affects the weather in a lot of ways in that movie. So I thought that was pretty cool. But you know, I just a lot of stuff to unpack, but that was the biggest thing that I think a lot of people should be paying attention to if they want to rewatch this movie or watch it. And I know that there's probably, I should say that there's spoilers definitely in this. I'll put it in the title, but this is just fresh in my mind of what I got. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys give it a watch, and I hope you guys might take something else that you might actually be able to add to the conversation with. So yeah, you know what? I will see you guys later, and see you on the next one.